planet had been visited before, and there it is, whether they go to Abydos or Dendera or any place else. Why don't they do this?
Because it's unpopular, because it's against what you're supposed to study in school. I was going to do my PhD in archeology, and I ended up doing it in linguistics because I realized that you can't come out with anything. You can do hardcore research, and you're not. There's no platform to speak on. And so I think that the patriarchy's agenda was to erase evidence of everything other than itself. During the witch trials, they traumatized people through torture and burning at the stake and all of that, so that all of the magic was sent into tarot, numerology, astrology, because it became really unpopular to understand that we could be self-empowered, we could have high levels of consciousness, God's within us, not outside of us, and the whole system that has, religious, political, control system fits together, and we're not supposed to understand this. And it's hidden in plain sight.
Yeah, it really is.
It really is. And so they've got to unplug us in different ways. And, I've got to say that going in the temples in this last trip, I was absolutely astounded at how irreverent people were. They're shouting and shoving in the temples. And this is a holy place. Like, what are you doing? And people have no sense of honoring. And so a lot of years, like after the Luxor incident, the temples were quite empty, and I'd take my groups and we could do meditations and light candles in the Holy of Holies and, tone and do something vibrationally, acoustically tuned and spiritual. And, now we have to strategize to go into the temples when they're not open. And on my groups, we went into the Great Pyramid by ourselves. We had sunrise between the paws of the Sphinx alone. And that's, not that easy to do, and it's expensive, but it's possible. And then you can really feel the energy. But people have been dumbed down to the point where they have no sense that they're standing in a sacred place. And that sorry?
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say the cavities of the human body are geometrically, sacred geometry represented in the temples. And so just standing in an Egyptian temple, if you're quiet and you feel, can actually give you some kind of an experience, a spiritual experience. Like, none of this happens by accident.
What are your thoughts on the Sphinx and Edgar Casey's predictions, basically, prophecy, that there's something at the base of the Sphinx, the Hall of Records?
Well, under the Sphinx, I think, is a misnomer. I think that there's a lot of secrets beneath and in front of the left paw, which is the Sphinx temple, and beside the left paw is the area where it would have been the Temple of Isis, and the initiates did some interesting activities connected to their training that had their base in those two places. And so I think the secrets and what actually happened there has been locked shut and buried and cemented over, and the passageways that are down there are closed. And so I think that there were a lot of access points and consciousness-raising activities in a very sophisticated way where there was cross-dimensional interaction, and it all happened right there. Now, I don't expect an English book to be found, and I think that we end up having narrow ways of understanding what the Hall of Records is. The Halls of Amenti, what does that mean? In the Emerald Tablets, they talk about it. And so we do have documents that speak in myth and in metaphor that are actually accessing these sorts of things, but we aren't in a headspace to comprehend it. And yes, I think that beneath and beyond the left paw of the Sphinx and down, there's something, but not what you would expect. Because we make up what we would expect because we're looking through our own cultural lenses, right?
See, I thought maybe we'd find flying machines down there, plans for the pyramids, just about everything.
Well, there's no plans for the pyramids, and that is an obvious oversight. We don't see that anywhere. It's a curiosity. The things that look like the passageways inside the pyramids are actually on the tomb walls in the Valley of the Kings, talking about the bardos and how you navigate between this incarnation and the next. The Egyptians were sure they had no word for death, and they were sure that they would become something else, and that their soul would live on. They called it the Ba. So the Ka is the body double. So if you were to bilocate, your Ka is the one in the other place, and your body is still where you started. Your Ba is your soul. So when you leave your body in a time of death or in an out-of-body experience, it's your Ba that lives on. And so, you don't see, no, there are no plans for you're not going to find plans for the pyramids anywhere, and I'm not expecting that we are. The other thing you don't find is when you see the crowns, the white crown and the red crown that they keep insisting are the crowns of Upper and Lower Egypt. No burial has ever found a crown. Those are largely symbolic. And Hakim said that they were the thymus and the womb, and that they were a representation of the sacredness of procreation. And so there are things that you look at in Egypt that are symbolic. There are things that are interdimensional and multidimensional, and then there are concrete things like plates and combs and wigs and things. So it's a curiosity how it all fits together. I really don't think that there are flying machines down there, but when you think about something being buried, the boats were buried, the solar boats, and they said they were the boats for the pharaoh to go to his home on the other side. But the boats were watermarked, and the river moved. The river migrated, and so they buried. There's quite a few places. If you stand at the top of the pyramid, I've climbed it a few times, and you can look down and you can see the places where there would have been a solar boat. And so at Abu Raush, there's more up there. Now, where the boats ended up now, there's one that they built a structure around it so you can go in and look at it. And so, yes, they buried vessels, and there is a network, a huge, enormous network underneath all the pyramids from one end to the other of the pyramid fields that expand for 15 miles. And part of it's a limestone aquifer, and part of it is man-made, honeycomb, zigzag-shaped passageways. I spent 5 years absolutely riveted to find out as much as I could about those underground passageways. And they are numerous, and they are blocked. And they used to have openings that came up onto the plateau in shafts where the sunlight would shine in, the water would flood when the Nile was in its place, the water would get energized from the beam of the sun, but also the stars would shine in. And when the water receded, there were exercises that the high-level initiates would do where they would go and do star. They would leave their bodies and they would go out and connect with a star, and the trick was to return and to be able to bring the knowledge back. So their bodies would be taken care of by attendants who were also high-level initiates, 4, and one person would go. And this comes from past life memories verified by other psychics that have followed my work, but this is my understanding of how it worked. And then all cultures have these places where there would be 72 hours of integration or some kind of a test, where in Tibet they would bury the monks and they were in a coffin or something, and they would have to maintain their cool and their breathing so that they could do the test. And you find on Easter Island there are these little alcoves, and so there's many initiation ceremonies that were done, and these were done down in those halls. And it's profound because you would notice the rotation of the earth, and when the star would be above the shaft and the chamber is below, it's almost like the initiate could leave out their crown chakra and connect with that star, and then their bodies would collapse because the Ka had left. I made a mistake a minute ago. The Ba is what carries on with you when you're dead, but the Ka is what travels in and out or bilocates.
Of all your travels over the years, more than 20 years, was there one fascinating aspect of Egypt that still puzzles you, Carmen, that still perplexes you?
Well, the way this psychic archaeology works, because I had visions. I started out as a young child with visions, but then the visions became very specific about a place. and there was more than one place.